name is Dr. Kanya Bell, and we are here for the oral defense of Diana Abor, and her title is Leadership and Financial Stability in Texas Nonprofits. With us today, we have Dr. King, the URM, and we have our PV, Dr. Williams. Diana, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bell. Good afternoon, esteemed committee members. My full names are Botogo Diana Agbo. I like to be called Diana because my names are really difficult to pronounce. I'm a doctorate student in management with a concentration in organizational leadership at the University of Phoenix. It is both a deep honor for me and a personal milestone to present this research today to you guys. It is titled Leadership and Financial Stability in Texas Nonprofit Organization. Before I proceed, I'd like to begin by expressing a profound gratitude to my chair, Dr. Bell, and to my URM, Dr. Imani, and to Dr. Williams. Your guidance, insight, and unwavering support have been very instrumental in shaping my scholarly journey. My path to this moment has been marked by a lot of things. It's been both personal and professional triumph. I first began this program way back in 2014, but I had to pause a little bit because I had a heartbreaking loss. I lost my mom, who was the only surviving parent for me, and she left back six other kids, and that left me with a huge burden. So I had to nurture and grow my family, my six siblings, and my own young family. It was only through faith, resilience, and determination that I rose to lead so many organizations today. I do have a company named American Dietech Institute. It's a university where I'm a chairperson. I'm also the chairperson of a credit union that is called Geek Up Credit Union. I am the CEO of Dietech International Group. That is a non-profit. I also have Ebai Investment, which is a real estate company, amongst others. Each of these roles that I have shared made me to understand a deeper on leadership, service, and financial realities and how it impacts mission uh, driving. But what really ignited my quest for this study was not the professional experience, it was my lived experience. And I do remember that day vividly when I went with my husband, we were hand in hand in front of a non-profit organization called Helping Hands. And when we got there, there was a sign at the door that said we had run out of funds. I had been approved, I had been screened, and I've also been scheduled. And I had placed my hope on this organization that I was going to be given some funds to settle some of the issues I had. But the hope I had that day was dashed in the door. And I was so disappointed because this organization did not have the funds that I needed in order to serve myself at the time. And not long ago, because of need again, I had to apply for my son for the Head Start program. He was waitlisted, but he was never called. Once again, the answer was, we do not have funds or we ran out of funds. These are the moments, amongst others, that disappointed me, but turned out to change the course of my life. They raised a very painful but essential question. And the question is, why do nonprofits fail the very people that need them most? This question became my purpose. It is what brought me back to this program after so many years. It is what led me to this research because behind every closed door, there is a family in crisis. Behind every closed door, there is a parent searching for help. Behind every closed door, there is a child who deserves better. So, therefore, this dissertation is not just an academic pursuit for me, it is my story and the story of countless others out there who need nonprofits to be more than well intentioned. They do need nonprofits to be sustainable, they need nonprofits to be resilient, and they need nonprofits to be enduring. So, today, I present to you guys this research, which is a voice for those families because they too deserve to be heard. And my research is going to be presented in different segments. I will look at the problem statement, I'll be looking at the purpose statement. I'll look at research question. I'll also look at significance of the study, literature review, my conceptual framework, ethical consideration, my methodology. I'll analyze it. I'll show some results. I'll bring out a thematic diagram. I'll show some implications. I'll bring out recommendations to leaders, researchers, and also today I'll bring us a little take home message on what leadership is all about. Our next slide here is introduction. In recent years, the nonprofit Texas particularly has experienced a significant growth between the year of 2015 to 2022. However, this expansion has not really matched proportionally with finance because only 13% during this time has increased. And this has created a widening resource gap that has placed so many nonprofits at a financial risk. And today, Texas is a home to so many nonprofit, which is about 130,000. But so many of them are losing fund. Therefore, my research, which is titled Leadership and Financial Stability in Texas Nonprofit, specifically, the study will explore leadership behaviors, strategic decision making, and the application of financial tools that will support organizational resilience amid escalating demands and constrained resources. Our next slide is the problem statement. I'd like to read the problem statement verbatim. The problem is that Texas nonprofit organizations lack a sufficient understanding of which leadership strategies and decision making techniques lead to financial stability. This absence of clear leadership and decision making strategy jeopardizes their ability to secure funding and deliver critical services to impoverished families. It is true that Texas nonprofits do lack sufficient understanding of which strategies and decision-making techniques lead to financial stability. So our goal is we will explore my goal was to explore how these strategies can improve the financial stability of Texas nonprofit. Now that moves to the purpose. The purpose of this qualitative exploratory case study is to understand how leadership behaviors and financial strategies within Texas nonprofit organizations contribute to achieving financial stability and economic uncertainty. I made sure I read that excerpt of my purpose statement verbatim. Now, as my study explores how these leadership behaviors and financial strategies will help Texas nonprofit stay financially stable even in economic uncertainty. It will look at how leaders make funding decisions, how they do manage limited resources, how they apply transformational and servant leadership. And my goal was to uncover fundamental strategies nonprofit leaders use to keep their organizations running and serving their community even in very tough times. Now, from this stated purpose, my research questions naturally emerge that shape the focus and direction of my study. So my next slide is a research question, and bear with me, I'm going to read them verbatim. Research question 1. What leadership styles and behaviors are most effective in Texas nonprofit organizations and how do they impact financial stability and service quality? Research question 2. How do leaders in Texas nonprofit organizations approach decision making and address funding challenges to ensure financial resilience? Research question 3. What processes and tools, such as financial reports and budgeting documents, do leaders in nonprofit organizations use to maintain and achieve financial stability? Before exploring the study's finding, it is important to recognize that while answering these research questions, they do hold a significant value to practice, policy, and scholarship. That's why we will rush to the next slide, which is the significance of the study. Now, this study addresses a critical gap in the literature by linking leadership behaviors and financial outcomes in Texas nonprofit organizations. Some findings offer practical guidance. This finding will offer us practical guidance for enhancing leadership development and strengthening board governance practice by uncovering how leadership strategies influence physical resilience. More so, the study provides a valuable insight for donors, policymakers, and future researchers who are seeking to support long-term sustainability of the non-profit sector. Now, that's it for the significance, as a brief for the significance of my study. And to ground this study within existing academic discourse, I will now present a brief overview of the relevant literature. It's important to note that past and current research has extensively explored nonprofit leadership and also financial stability or financial sustainability, with foundational contributions from great writers like Burns, Bass, Greenfield, Pfeiffer, and Salinsix, and also authors as Heyman and Hemovics, Tuckman and Cheng, Kingman, who also emphasized that leadership influenced financial vulnerability, yet there was no connection between leadership behavior with the actual use of financial tools. Most recent works, including Carroll and Stater, and even Prentice, they focus on financial outcomes or leadership limitation, often done through the quantitative lenses. None of these authors or writers examined leadership and how it affects financial stability within nonprofit organizations in real time. Despite their numerous contributions, there is still a clear gap that remains because there is no study that has holistically explored how nonprofit leaders in Texas specifically integrate leadership, financial decision making, and practical financial tools to sustain their organization, especially in conditions like the COVID-19. My study fulfills that gap using a qualitative multi-case analysis which offers a region-specific and behavior-focused perspective that prior research has not addressed. Therefore, building on this gap, which I have just previewed us on, I will work on the conceptual framework that was carefully chosen to anchor the study theoretically. Our next slide is conceptual framework. In this study, the concept of transformational leadership, which was introduced by Byrne and expanded by Bass, emphasizes vision, innovation, and empowering teams to achieve more with very few resources. As Greenfield described, 7 leadership focus on empathy, stewardship, and prioritizing the needs of followers and community. While there's a resource dependency theory, which was developed by Pfeiffer and Salinsky, it explains how organizational survival depends on external resources acquisition. And this positions nonprofit leaders as boundary spanners, managing donors and stakeholders' relationship. These theories did suggest that effective nonprofit leaders must be mission-driven and financially strategic. Our next slide will walk through ethical consideration. It's important to note that in order for me to proceed with my research, I was able to use an IRB approved flyer and script. Before I started the interviews, I made sure that everyone gave their informed consent and understood the need for participation and also understood that it was very voluntary and confidential. I did not run a field test, but I consulted with my chair and my methodologist who approved the interview questions before I could move forward with the research. My next slide is my methodology. My study utilized a qualitative exploratory multi-case study design to explore how leadership influences financial stability across multiple Texas nonprofit. The case study was very appropriate because it allowed for an in-depth contextual understanding of leadership behaviors across different settings with aligning on how and why nature of my research questions. The data which I collected was using a semi-structured interview, and this was done within 15 executive leaders, CEOs, executive directors, which were selected across Texas nonprofit organization. I ensured diversity in size, service area, and region within Texas. And also to strengthen the analysis, I made use of document analysis, including financial reports like 9 1090 income statement, strategic planning statements, and which allow for triangulation. And this also added to the credibility of my research. And credibility was further enhanced by applying the concept of member check-in, maintaining an audit trail, using NVivo 15. I did use NVivo 15 trial version. I didn't buy the real one, so I used the trial version for organizing codes. And my study assumed that leadership decisions impact financial outcome. This belief is grounded in the literature. Limitations also included context-specific nature of the study and an over-reliance on the self-report, which is I, the researcher, mostly almost every time taking records on the research, which may introduce bias, but this was mitigated with journaling. So I took my journals down to make sure I mitigated bias. Next slide is analysis. I collected a qualitative data using 15 semi-structured interviews within 15 nonprofit leaders across Texas. Now, it is very interesting to note that by the 12th interview, there were no new teams that were emerging, but I was kind of curious to know what was ahead. And this indicated that I've reached data saturation level. This milestone gave me a lot of confidence that conducting additional interviews would not yield substantial insights, but regardless, I went through. To enhance the robustness of my findings, I also collected organizational documents like financial reports, 990 budgets, which I used alongside interview data for triangulation. Excuse me. This methodological triangulation did help me to corroborate the interview findings and reinforce the overall credibility of my research. I utilize NVivo 15, the trial version, to manage and quote the materials. All interview transcripts and accompanying documents were imported into the software where I performed open line by line coding. Now, one very interesting thing that made me laugh when I was conducting the research was the usage of the word codes and codes, the codes with a C and the codes with a Q. So it was really interesting. The codes with a Q are excerpts from my participant, while the codes were the ones that emerged and subsequently gave birth to the teams. Now, each transcript was carefully reviewed and descriptive codes were assigned to distinct ideas expressed by each participant. Rather than using a predefined code book, I allowed codes to emerge inductively from the data. And frequently, sometimes I adopted the participant's own language. Through this process, I was able to generate approximately 50 to 55 initial codes reflecting key concepts such as transparent communication and diversifying funding streams. And Vivo 15 supported my workflow as it helped me to organize the codes effectively and allowed me to retrieve relevant codes with so much ease. Through a careful analysis, key themes began to emerge, which are now summarized to present the main findings. My coding strategy was primarily inductive, enabling teams to surface. Now, because of time constraints, I will not be able to go through the analysis and give all details about the codes, about the teams that emerged. I'll go ahead and move to results. Now, in the results, I had 6 teams that emerged: visionary and transformational, collaborative and inclusive decision making, adaptive and resilient leadership, strategic financial planning and oversight, diversified funding strategies, and mission focus and service commitment. It is true that my study resulted and covered 6 solid teams. And the first team, I'd like to just use one of the participants. The first team, visionary and transformational, is shown through one of the excerpts as the leader said, I see myself as the chief officer. I always discuss our mission and when we want to be in five and where we want to be in 5 or 10 years. I painted that picture for my team and our supporters. When people can visualize the impact we are striving for, they can get excited and want to be part of it. I found that this enthusiasm translates into more challenging work from staff and more extraordinary generosity from donors, which helps to enhance our financial stability. This was a quote from one of my participants, and that was participant number 5. Now, as a result, I created this little diagram here. It's a thematic network, and we can see from this diagram, I'm going to use just one of it for time constraint. We see that in one of the diagrams, it shows that a team emerged as adaptive and resilient leadership. And some of the codes that generated these teams are crisis adaptation, strategic partnership for resilience, creative problem solving, learning from challenges, need-based prioritization, positive mindset, and more. So this network diagram shows us that codes that contributed to the emergence of the respective teams. Now, my research came out with implications and recommendations, and I like to address the implications first. The finding of my study revealed that leadership plays a pivotal role in ensuring financial stability within nonprofit organizations because leaders who adopt an entrepreneurial mindset are characterized by innovation, they are risk takers, and strategic resource mobilizers. They tend to attract more funding and more funders and create a sustainable pathway for growth. And more importantly, mission alignment emerge as a critical factor because when leaders are deeply connected to the organization core mission, it fosters trust among stakeholders and strengthens community engagement. My study also bridges a very significant knowledge gap by explicitly linking leadership behaviors to financial outcomes. It offers a foundation for evidence-based leadership training and development. More importantly, I would like to note that the broader implication of this research extends beyond the nonprofit sector, as effective leadership not only secures financial resilience, but it also amplifies the organization's social impact, positioning it as a transformative agent in communities itself. I also came out with recommendations for nonprofit leaders and practitioners. I believe that this research strengthens financial sustainability and enhances long term impact because nonprofit leaders are encouraged to engage in forward thinking strategic planning, which anticipate future challenges and aligns with organization mission. A critical component of this strategy is a diversification of revenue stream, moving beyond reliance on a single source to ensure greater reliance. Leaders should also ensure that all their revenue generating activities are mission aligned. It shouldn't be influenced by their personal motives. So reinforcing the organization core mission and enhancing donor trust is one of the that comes out of. So and then enhancing an entrepreneurial mindset is essential as it fosters innovation, adaptability, and proactive risk taking in response to a dynamic funding environment. Finally, I believe that my research recommends that investing in leadership development and financial management skill is paramount because it builds internal capacity in areas that equips organization to make very informed decisions and not only informed decision, it helps to optimize their resources and in the long run helps them to achieve greater organizational stability and impact. I also came out with recommendations for future research. I do believe that my research gives way for future research as future researchers are encouraged to broaden the scope of inquiry to capture a more diverse and comprehensive understanding of leadership influence on nonprofit financial stability. I believe that if this research is expanded across different regions, organizational types, and cultural contexts, it could offer an even richer insight. More so, if we examine specific leadership factors like emotional intelligence, ethical decision making, or adaptive capacity, it may also deepen the understanding of what leadership traits most directly contribute to financial resilience. And longitudinal studies are especially recommended so we can track changes over time and reveal the lasting impact of leadership behavior on the outcome. Researchers could also take into account of external influences such as economic shift, policy changes, and even donor trends, which may significantly affect nonprofit performance. More importantly, refining and expanding the theoretical models of this research to better explain the complex dynamic between leadership and financial stability will not only strengthen the academic discourse, but I believe that it will also enhance the practical relevance for nonprofit practitioners. Now, this is a very interesting part of my study as well. And this is comparing and contrasting the research. Now I did I picked out three to compare because of the time constraint, and one of it is transformational leadership and mission alignment. Now, tell me, my findings shows that leaders demonstrate transformational leadership behaviors, such as articulating a very clear vision that inspire their staff, align teams with mission-driven goal, and this strengthens both organizational culture and financial resilience. Now, I'll compare it to existing literature. Burns in 1978 alongside Bass of 1985. They are the ones who laid the foundation for transformational leadership, describing it as what? Leadership that inspires followers through shared vision and mission. There's also Gear and Al, who confirms that leadership, transformational leadership, enhances physical accountability and organizational performance in nonprofit. And there is a contrast in all this is while the traditional studies emphasize that performance and accountability it emphasizes performance and accountability outcomes, my study uniquely connected transformational leadership to financial stability via staff morale, donor trust, and strategic alignment, highlighting a direct but powerful financial pathway, not always measured in quantitative research. My next theme compared is seven leadership and team empowerment. My findings show that leaders practice seven leadership by empowering their staff, they listen actively, and they create inclusive environment, which results to a higher engagement and resilience. Past literature by Greenleaf 1977 introduced the concept of leadership as a philosophy which is centered on serving first. Linden and Al of 2008 also found that seven leadership increases team morale and performance, while Eva and Al 2019 emphasized its role in building trust and employee commitment in mission-driven organization. The contrast in this is that whereas the past literature highlights psychological and relational outcome, my study expands the scope by linking seven leadership directly to financial resilience. It shows that empowered teams contribute to stronger service quality and donor retention. My last theme is strategic partnership and resource dependency. And my findings do show that leaders formed a strategic partnership and stakeholder network to diversify resources and reduce dependency, which is a key to financial stability. Previous research by Pfeiffer and Salinsik introduced resource dependency theory, emphasizing that external relationships do help to mitigate uncertainty. Snarvelli and Tracy in 2002 demonstrated how collaborative arrangements enhance nonprofit service effectiveness and funding access. Now, there's a contrast between the previous and my findings because while earlier research focuses on macro level of collaboration, this study entails practical, localized strategies like joint grant application, shared staffing that show how RDT or the resource dependency theory is operationalized in real time from small size nonprofit organizations. We'll go to the next slide. As of right now, we have exhausted everything about my study in brief. And now I'd like to give us a little take home message. To me, the central take home from this study is that leadership plays a very decisive role in shaping the financial resilience of every nonprofit organization. And I say so because from my research, it shows that effective leaders, those who are strategic, those who are ethical, and those who are adaptive, they are able to navigate funding challenges with a greater foresight, with integrity, and agility. Their influence extends beyond internal operations to stakeholders' engagement. It extends beyond resource acquisition and long-term sustainability. So I say today that this research, it does not only affirm the critical importance of leadership in nonprofit financial health, but it also lays a solid groundwork and foundation for future studies and practical application that aim to strengthen leadership capacity and organizational stability across the sector. Thank you, and I welcome all your questions, recommendations.
Thank you so much. What a great job that you did presenting. So hats off to you. Thank you very much. I do have a few questions to start with, and then I'll hand it off to my peers. One of the things you talked about is your selection of Texas as a place to conduct your study. And so Texas is a big place. I live here, so I kind of know where you're going with and why that was important to do the study for Texas. But can it be replicated more specifically in some of our smaller regions, right? So when you look at a California or what have you, I think it can be replicated. But what about replicating in areas where um, the topic or the industry that you were looking at, nonprofit, would be like on a smaller scale? Do you think it can be replicated, and if so, why?
Thank you, Dr. Bell, for that question. Yes, I think to a greater extent it can be replicated because leadership styles and non-profit structures share the same characteristics across the board. It is true that the region is specific, but I think that when it comes to threat and styles, yes, it can be replicated.
Okay, thank you for that. And then you talked about in your findings, you talked about aligning efforts with what does my notes say? Okay, can't even read my own notes. If can you go back a couple of pages, you talked about like aligning the efforts, one of the recommendations, or I'm sorry, one of the findings.
Mm,
It was on your findings page.
recommendation.
Yeah, right here, efforts with the mission, right? So can you give specifics? So when you say aligning efforts, what are those efforts? What are some examples of those?
Aligning efforts and can you take
Yes.
the
It
question
says
again?
bullet number 3. You talked about align revenue efforts with mission. Can you give examples of what those efforts would be, right?
Okay,
Mhm.
one of those efforts will be normally in a stringent traditional nonprofit scenario. They are way back and very late about how they generate revenue. They mostly just sit and write letters to donors and believe that by virtue of the fact that they are nonprofit, these donors are supposed to donate to them. But no, that is not the case. It is important that nonprofits begin to believe that they could go above and beyond and begin to indulge in initiatives that could generate more funds, like setting up projects that they could sell, but they would align these projects with their mission. So it is not personal oriented. For example, they like a nonprofit that takes care of children's need could sell books at a very reduced or subsidized price in order to generate funds rather than sitting and waiting for the Department of Education to disburse funds to them. So they could align that with their mission.
All right.
That's what I
Thank you. And then my last question, you talked about the 7 leadership styles that had linkage to your study. Were there one or two that was more prevalent than the other, or are you saying this whole list of leadership styles are required or needed, right, to increase the financial stability?
That's a great question. After I went through my study, interestingly, I realized that one is no more prevailing than the other. In order for a nonprofit to achieve a maximum financial stability, there's need to put in all three together. And so I'm thinking in the near future, there could be a theory called the multi-dimensional theory.
Okay.
That's
Thank
funny,
you.
but I thought that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Thank you.
you're
Thank you
welcome.
very much. All right, so I will hand it over to my colleagues and see if they have any questions.
I actually have just a few questions for you, Diana. Great job, by the way. I
Thank you.
love everything that I learned throughout the study. So great job on that. Um, were there any themes that emerged in the results that were most surprising or that stood out to you?
Well, not much that emerged that was very surprising to me. Um, but it was interesting on how the different leaders had kind of, it was like a one mind. They mostly spoke the minds of each other. So telling me that they all embody some part of either the transformational or either the seven or the resource dependency, then there's a need for them to put all together. But no, I wasn't surprised. There was no team that was very surprising.
Okay, okay. If you were to conduct the study all over again, would you choose the same research design and methodology?
I will, but I think I will improve it because I wouldn't rely on the qualitative alone. I think I'll be doing a mixed method where I would use numerical values to probably uh, explain more behind leadership complex theories. I think I'll do a mixed method. And also, I would not restrict myself to Texas alone, because one of the difficulties that I faced when I worked, I was about to go into the field was um, I I could not get participants, so it was really difficult. But so I started thinking to myself, am I going to do it all over? But yes, if I'm to do it all over, I will expand my geographical region so that I have more access. Thank you.
Okay. What was the most fascinating aspect of the research that you find kind of stood out to you or emerged in a way that you didn't foresee initially?
Well, as somebody going through the research, I know some people have gone through this process, but this is my first time. So, what was fascinating to me more so was the process itself. When I had conducted the research and I had to transcribe it to through to both scribe, I came out with a script and then I'm at the scripts and I tried to match it with the excerpts and make sure that everything was very unique and there was no distortion in what the my participant had said. And when I input the scripts into NVivo 15, I was amazed as to how the codes came out and how it subsequently I had the team. So that was a very interesting process for me. I loved it. That was for me, that was it for me that made it. I felt satisfied that I did something, regardless of everybody I spoke to. This process was the most important for me.
Great, great. One last question, and this is more so for me as a practitioner and scholar and all those things. Um, is there anything that you felt that you could have I could have done better, or anything that you feel like you weren't supported on from the URM seat? Do you feel like there's anything that I could have maybe assisted you more on, or anything that you feel like you didn't gain or get throughout the process?
No, I must say that I'm very lucky. I'm blessed And I know maybe because of time constraint, I ran over a lot of things. For example, I talked about how I started the program in 2014. This is by far the best team, an excellent team that I've had. You all have supported me to the optimal. I know I would text Dr. Armani at very odd hours sometimes, and I feel really bad. And when I text you, you call me right away. And that's the same for Dr. Bell. She'll call me right away. And I just got to know Dr. Williams. I'll send him an email. He will reply, but he's more so very straightforward. He said, put it where everybody will see it. So, and thank you all so much. Yes, you guys have been very supportive.
And that's all the questions that I have.
Dr. Williams?
Yes, Diana, a very good presentation. I do have a couple of questions and a few comments to make.
Yes,
The
sir.
first question I have is where did you get the 100,000 nonprofits in the intro slide? Where did that number come from?
I got it from a nonprofit journal. I have it here. Give me 1 second. I apologize. One Star 2023. I used it a lot. I used One Star 2020, One Star 2023. I got those records from there.
Okay. If you're going to present in the future, something that you should put there so that the audience understands what you're talking about. Because if you're
Yes,
just saying a number, they're going to question like I'm questioning. Where did
yes,
that
doctor.
come from without seeing that?
Yes, doctor.
So just food for thought. Another question that I have is the results, and I have to read off my notes. If you had one type of nonprofit, how would the results may have been different rather than having multiple nonprofits like in your study?
If I had one nonprofit, I think I wouldn't believe that is a direct representation of what is experienced by other leaders. I would be in doubt because one does not really represent the ideologies, the methods, and strategies utilized by everybody else. So I wouldn't think the results will be the same.
Okay, understood. Now let me go a little bit more granular than that. For instance, a CEO has a different direction than a COO or CFO.
Mhm.
Now, how would your study might have been different if all the participants were CEOs, CFOs, or COOs, something like that?
Now, if all participants were CEOs or CFOs, it might have been different because their roles are slightly different. And it is true that some nonprofits are small and the CEO kind of fits the shoes of every other
Mhm.
position or duty, but some CEOs and CFOs stays at their defined responsibilities. So I think the result might have been different because it would not represent certain characteristics of leadership that I am looking for. But again, I believe that the fact that I was able to utilize document analysis, I was able to do member checking with employees. I kind of matched. It was a representation of what the leader was saying about the organization.
Okay, and with that, you did state it that you wanted to delve into more research. That could be a thought. Just getting more granular than your current research. Just a thought. And that segues into my comments I have. Uh, because do you plan to have conferences, publish things of that nature?
Yes, doctor, I do.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and segue into that because you sent me an email yesterday, which I responded to this morning, stating that as PV, I'm going to look at it.
Yes,
APA
sir.
and all that. Which go ahead and go your problem statement slide. I'm going to go slide by slide and show you the mistakes
Yes,
that you
sir.
have. Introduction's fine. It's
Okay.
the at the very bottom, the last sentence. Do you see two periods at the
Yes, I
very
do.
end? Okay,
Yes.
you gotta take care of that.
Oh,
Um, just make a note of it and take care of it later.
okay.
And the literature slide. Maybe I might be out of order a little bit. Yes, the literature slide. Now, do you see Tuckman and Chain? Now,
Yes.
when you have two authors that's not within parentheses with the year, it's and, not the ampersand. The
Okay.
ampersand is only when it's totally encompassed within parentheses. So that's a mistake. Well, actually, it's Herman. It should be and, not the ampersand. Tuckman
Okay.
and, not the ampersand. Carol and, not the ampersand. Okay, let's
Noted.
see.
Thank you.
Yes, just make it. Let me see. Conceptual framework. The first one is your author should be in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Bash should come before Burns. When you have authors from different sources, it's in alphabetical order. So make a note of that. And let's see. The next one is thematic network.
Before you
Okay.
go there, it's
Yes.
the spaces after like innovation, trust,
Uh,
and dependencies.
yeah. There you go.
There should be a space
It
between
should
there.
be right. I missed that one, but you're right.
Mhm.
You're right. Right. Yes, at the very bottom should be spaced
Okay.
between trust and the parentheses and dependencies in the parentheses spaced.
Okay.
Okay. And then that's why you have multiple eyes to catch this. Thematic network slide.
Okay. Mhm.
Now, go back. Thematic
Or
network.
you
Now,
read.
why I'm pointing this out? If you are presenting this to a crowd, an audience, they cannot see this. I could not read this. I put on my glasses and could not read this. So you want to make it so that the audience can read it and follow with you. And my suggestion would be to have each one on a separate slide, not
Okay.
bunch them together. So you got to remember you're presenting to an audience. You know this as a researcher, but as the audience, I need to know what direction you're going in. And then I have two more comments. I think it's the first recommendation slide that you have. No, keep going. Right. I'm sorry. Is that the next one? Or maybe that's my eyes. Next one, or my scribbling. No, you're fine. I'm sorry about that. That's my scribbling. You're okay. But the last one I have is references are always in alphabetical order. It does not matter the delivery method. Did you see they're out of order?
It's out of order.
Yes. It needs to be in alphabetical order.
Alphabetical order.
But besides that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr.
Hmm.
Williams.
All right. So, Diana, what we'd like to do is to have you leave, and then I'll text you to come back. But before you exit, are there any other closing comments you want to provide to your team?
Yes. I want to use this opportunity to say a big thank you to you all. You all may not know, but it's been 2014 that I started this journey, and today just it means the whole world to me. And the resilience for me to come back and having great people, great doctors like you all, just means that the scholarly world will be alive. So I'm grateful that you all gave me the opportunity and were there with me to run through, calling you at difficult times, sending numerous emails, not following instructions from Dr. William. So,
Hmm.
so I'm really grateful and thankful. I do hope that we cross paths as life goes on in why not in the scholarly world or maybe other times. So thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you. And I will text you when you can come back. Okay.
Yes, doctor.
All right. Thank you. I'm trying to see if I can give her the boot. All right. I'm going to stop the recording. Give me 1 second.